Airrack has had a very fast rate of growth. At 5.31 million subscribers, he's a YouTuber that through very deliberate tactics in the way that he does storytelling and the way he does packaging has actually achieved a lot of success with his videos. Today I'm going to be analysing his most popular long form video, which is what happens if you hire 50 bodyguards. This video has 16 million views in 10 months. When you have a good video like this, it means that there's going to be a very high click-through rate, but also a very high retention, and the only way to get good retention is to have really good storytelling. I guess to start off with the actual thumbnail, there's a high contrast between him and the rest of the people inside the thumbnail. And the idea of the premise is very clear, and the title is actually very clear. You know, you can easily share this with a friend and say, what happens if you hire 50 bodyguards? Well, someone else had actually tried to do that. It's a very easy concept to share. It's almost like you have this water cooler test that you've got to think about. So if it can be described to someone very easily in just a casual conversation, then that's a good idea for a video. If it's too complex to even explain to someone, then it's going to be too hard to go viral via word of mouth. Whenever we start with a video, we start with a hook. So someone has come to this video, they are curious to hear what happens if you hire 50 bodyguards. So generally speaking, you have to try to wrap up the hook very fast. You have to try to affirm the clip very fast. But Airrack has actually not exactly done that. He's actually started with more so a general exposition, a general premise. So I'll show you what I mean by that.
Some things in this world are reserved for the filthy rich. Massive mansions, cars, fine dining. For example, this is Saddle Ranch. It's an exclusive restaurant where the top internet celebrities come to mingle. That probably has, like, I don't know, Addison Rae in it. I, however, have never been able to get a reservation here. Hey, how's it going? Do you guys have any reservations open for tonight?
Not tonight.
What about tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow's booked as well. I'm so sorry.
Don't play your subscribers. I actually am a mafia leader and I have 1 million plus subscribers. So I wondered if I hired bodyguards and a fake paparazzi, would they finally let me into Saddle Ranch? And with that amount of power, what else would I be capable of?
This is a bit different from your traditional hook in the sense that this hook is actually quite long. It's about 40 seconds long. If you just started with the premise, oh, I'm going to try to get into Saddle Ranch, like, it's not actually a very interesting video because you have to actually explain the implications of what it means to try to overcome this challenge. That's why he started off with this brief explainer about, you know, just generally being able to afford rich things. There's a lot of like opening shots and very fast cuts in the first few seconds. So like, let's count the first 5 seconds of cuts, for example. It's like 1,
some things in this world are reserved for the filthy
2,
rich. Massive
3,
mansions, cars,
4,
fine dining.
5. So he's literally had a cut every second for the first 5 seconds. This has been amplified with subtitles, and that's just a common practice to want to visually get people's attention.
Example, this is Saddle Ranch. It's an exclusive restaurant where the top internet celebrities come to mingle. That probably has...
You'll notice that in the videography, there's a lot of movement in the videography as well, and that's just aimed to get people's attention too.
Like, I don't know, Addison Rae in it. I, however, have never been able to get a reservation here.
In this first bit, he's really setting up the narrative challenge that he has to overcome, and that's probably something that's important for these videos where it's not just a, oh, what happens if this happens? It's more so that I'm going to try to do something. Someone trying to do something or trying to achieve a goal, especially when that goal is kind of, it seems like it's almost out of reach for this person as they are now. It makes you curious as a viewer as to like, how are they going to possibly achieve this particular goal? And by having this unresolved question in mind, that starts to lay down the bricks for what is fundamentally a good story. Let's use the principle of inversion to demonstrate what it is that actually makes a good story. When you ask yourself, what is it that makes a bad story? That is actually a very revealing answer, right? So a bad story is where there's no goal or direction towards a plot. There's no movement in that plot whatsoever. The characters are uninteresting. Generally, it just seems like a kind of waste of time. Things aren't really going anywhere, right? So if you flip it back, the opposite is going to be true, where you have interesting characters, you have some sort of goal that's going to be achieved, some sort of direction and energy and push that you're putting in a video. And thinking about that energy at all times is going to be something that's really important for how you make videos as well. So if you ever find that you just, when you're watching a video, for example, when you're editing it, you just find that there's a bit that even you yourself are sort of glazing a little bit over, probably the viewer's going to glaze over that too. Also, like getting other people to help you analyze your videos will also help that aspect of things as well.
Any reservations open for tonight?
Not tonight.
What about tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow's booked as well. I'm so sorry.
Don't play your subscribers. I actually am a mafia
I think this is a
leader,
good
and I
little
have
humor
1
ad here.
million plus subscribers. So I wondered if I hired bodyguards and a fake paparazzi, would they finally let me into Saddle Ranch? And with that amount of power, what else would I be capable of? Now you guys know if we're gonna do something, we're gonna do it big.
Okay, so there's quite a few scene changes here as well. So even the voiceover actually changes its quality quite a lot, and that's actually something that's, you know, that change is actually quite good for retention. So almost here he's gone from, you know, on the streets, the second one he's at the restaurant, this one is at this place, right? So that many scene changes very quickly. Also, you have to be careful not to lose people, because it's actually kind of easy to lose people contextually. Like, people may not understand where physically he's at any one moment, but the way that it's fixed that is because it's just been him the entire time in each of these different places. That makes it a bit better. Whereas if you had different people in these places, that can be a mistake that some YouTubers can get into as well.
Saddle range. And with that
So always be careful to make sure not to lose your viewer and to understand the context of what they understand in the moment, right?
Now you guys know.
And then you set up this clear challenge plus these unresolved questions, like what else would I be capable of? Because you're really curious as to the, you know, what happens if you do hire 50 bodyguards. So reaffirming that is kind of like reaffirming the click. This is quite a long hook, but it's actually a very effective one.
If we're gonna do something, we're gonna do it big.
He does it in a way as well that it's not just him doing something and therefore like it's just his journey, right? He's very much bringing you into the world that he's developing, or into his challenge. If you just take a careful look at the words that he's using,
I'd be capable of. Now you guys know if we're gonna do something, we're gonna do it big.
Now, you guys know if we're going to do something, we're going to do it big. On Airrack's channel, and perhaps actually for a lot of really good channels, they have this very strong sense of almost the people that are watching the channel are part of a community. He's not saying stuff which is so self-entitled, like, it's your boy Airrack, which some people will say stuff like that. But instead, he's saying like, you guys know we're going to do it big. And that's kind of like a theme of his channel, right? It's almost, you could call it branding, perhaps in a sense, but it's something that ties together a lot of the videos that he has so that people have that expectation. And they're like, oh, I'm going to come to Airrack's channel and I know that in the future when I watch his videos he's probably going to do something big and interesting. Have a think from your own channel perspective about how you might do that macro branding. You know, what does your channel stand up for? What does your channel believe in? What is the community that you're creating?
Now you guys know if we're going to do something, we're going to do it.
If you look in the world of virtual YouTubing, which is where anime characters are streamers, they will also create names for the people that are watching them. Mori Calliope, for example, her chat is called Deadbeats. And just having something that makes people feel like they're part of something bigger by watching your YouTube video gives them a sense of warmth and a sense of belonging by watching your channel. To the point where even if you create this community, then people might even start talking to each other. Carl Jacobs talked about this as well, where he was so happy to hear that some of the people that watched his streams were using the language that he used in those streams and talking to each other and actually making friends off of streams, to the point where those people were becoming best friends with each other, right? I think that as a creator is something that's very valuable that you've created. So think about that also in the bigger picture too.
So how many bodyguards do I actually need? Let's find out. Kim Kardashian has one bodyguard. Dude, it's the same guy over and over. It looks like he's from WWE SmackDown. Mark Zuckerberg.
Basically, he's created to be a breathing room. When you have something that's so intense so quickly, you can't keep up that intensiveness forever. Because what happens is that even if you have the most intense car chase scene, for example, having continuous 10 minutes of it is actually very, very uninteresting. Realize when you've got to take a step back and create some breathing room for people, because that makes the things that happen afterwards so much more interesting and intense. But if you have something as a whole video, if it's like 10 out of 10 intensity the entire time, then actually people, interestingly, will actually drop off in terms of their ability to retain their attention. So instead, what you should do is you'd have it fluctuate from like, you might start off at a 9 or a 10 for the video, and then drop back down to a 6, and then go and try to escalate throughout the video from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But you can't have it at 10 all the time, because people will definitely drop off in that particular circumstance. I'll give you another quick example just to illustrate that point. I actually did a full analysis, which I'll be posting as well, either to Skillshare or YouTube. And if you look at the very start of his video...
Okay, so I'm about to spend $10,000 in the next 200 seconds ordering the most impossibly...
So this is like 9 out of 10, right?
Okay, I mean...
And then he's dropped back down to like a 6 or a 7 out of 10.
It's definitely not you. Wait...
Because he tries to drum back up that energy later on in the video. So Airrack has done exactly the same thing too. Oops, I uploaded twice.
Has been seen running with 3 bodyguards. Dude, they all look so happy.
Money does buy happiness, yes, but it does not buy you a good
It's a good time for...
Yeah, why does he look like
humor.
this?
Why does he have sweat just coming out of the center of his chest?
He's a robot.
That's where the Iron Man thing goes?
Yeah, that's where his Iron Man thing goes. The President of the United States himself looks like he has about 7 bodyguards. Realistically speaking, I think that we probably need
7 or something.
50. Yeah.
I think that having an extra character, in this particular case having Mac there to bounce things off, makes things a lot more organic and more funny than if he just tried to do it himself. This is something that can be quite tricky as a solo creator, I think, to create humor by yourself. I mean, people can certainly do this, and you know, there's certainly many solo YouTubers, of course, that are very good at this. It's just more difficult, and perhaps even somehow like scripted humor is just somehow a bit less funny than organic humor. It's not true all the time necessarily. Sometimes you might be able to get away with this by, for example, creating conversations with yourself. But there's something about the dynamic of people talking to other people that is actually, you know, more interesting and more funny, generally speaking. Even if that's like a streamer talking to their chat, for example, that's sometimes more interesting, that interaction, rather than just someone trying to go through something by themselves. It's almost like the interesting part of many videos is actually someone's interaction with something else, right? Rather than just a person talking from themselves. A person that's just having a pure, like full-on monologue conversation, maybe that's interesting, but it's very hard to make that interesting, right? It's always when they're interacting with something. Maybe they're interacting with another person, maybe they're interacting with the game that they're playing, for example. They're interacting with something that is almost challenging them and causing them to have to think about stuff. And watching that is more interesting.
Illegal. Dude, that's like an organized mob. How are you gonna pay for 50 bodyguards?
Let's not jump to conclusions. Just, I'll get a quote and we'll see what happens.
Always within a video, you want to make sure that the actual structure of it is really well defined. For example, by saying step 1, step 2, step 3, if you give these things for people to grab onto, then that makes it so much more rewarding for a person to actually watch it, because they feel like they're actually making progress by itself. Think about something as more discrete rather than continuous if you can for a video, right? Generally speaking, a video that's just like continuous, one, this, and this, it's something that people can lose interest in, right? Whereas if it's like, okay, we've completed phase 1, now we go to phase 2, and then phase 2 is blah, and then we've completed that, now we go to phase 3, then that definition makes more interest, it creates more structure, right?
And to get a quote for 50 bodyguards. Aiden, do we have any quotes back yet?
We got 47.
Are you serious? $47,000? Oh yeah. Are we gonna negotiate or?
I'll try to get him down. Eric, we cannot spend that much money. We're going to debt if we spend that much money.
We have to be able to get this down a little bit. Shout out to Current, the future of banking. Thanks for sponsoring. You need to get it down to half.
Just give me the card.
Get it down to half.
Just give me the card, man.
I'm trusting you.
That was a terrible idea.
Alright, so we're meeting our first security guard in...
Seeing behind the scenes with these guys as they're planning this, it's kind of great, right? Like you feel like you're hanging out with them in a sense, even though you're actually just physically watching from the screen. That's a big difference between YouTube and perhaps traditional media. Is very much YouTube is not a sense of I am telling you something. It's we are doing something together as like the viewer and you as the YouTuber, the creator. Some people might call it parasocial relationships, I suppose, but in a vague sense, some people might call it parasocial relationships. That sense of always understanding that there's someone on the other side of your screen is something that's going to make the way you present things so much better.
1 hour, one problem. Look at me.
You're disgusting.
I don't look famous. So we're gonna stop by American Vintage real quick. You could go with like a flashy look, or you could go with like the low-key like Justin Bieber look. All right, what are we doing with those? Let's go ahead and put those back.
What the F, bro?
Am I bold enough to wear a crop top all day?
Are you rich enough is the real question. Yo, you actually look kind of fresh in that, bro.
You're gonna be very hot in the California heat.
You mean like good looking hot? I like a Balcomore from the thrift shop video right now, dude.
Mac Olmore.
Yo!
That's not bad, bro. That is not bad. I mean...
Do you like my outfit? At Airrack, you spend 1 hour buying all this.
I have no control over the situation.
You see how many beautiful guests are waiting?
Oh, ready? So it's all gonna be 450
Oh! Thank you.
Bye, girls. I think they like me.
Hideous in literally any social situation. It makes me just want to leave immediately.
That's a kind of fun videography there.
What? Taking the sunglasses off and walking down the street.
We look awesome.
What's up, boss?
Alright guys, we're gonna start small on this thing with just one bodyguard. I'm here. Asani, good to meet you, man.
You are a body.
Alright, so here we sort of begin the escalation, right? Because you know that this video now is not just like, oh, we're going straight to hiring 50 bodyguards, because almost like that's the climax of the video before your video has even started. So rather, this idea that you're continuing this like motif and just trying to escalate it over time is going to be something that hooks people to the end, right? Because what it's going to do is he's going to gradually reveal bodyguards as the video goes on. Think about how you can do that for your own videos. You know, is there a way to make it so that rather than just being like, oh, like this is the video, this is 50 bodyguards, and we're done, and like that's what happens if you do it. Like it's not a very interesting video, right? It's actually more so the journey rather than the pure destination that's very interesting. And so that's what you have to keep in mind at all times. Every video can be divided into the hook, event, payoff structure, right? The hook is the thing that people might feel improves their life, or it's the thing where they feel like they're going to get entertained if they keep on watching. The event or is just really the actual content, and then the payoff is obviously the bit at the end where they finally get that answer that they've been looking for. You know, they get that resolution, they understand now what happens if you have 50 bodyguards. Really, the meat after you've done a good hook is in that content bit before the payoff, right? The whole aim of that is you're just trying to make that bit as satisfying as possible. One of the most powerful ways to do that is to have it so there's a continual escalation of tension.
Thank God for you there. I can knock you out in 3 seconds.
Always pay attention to sound design. So for example, like that squishy sound, he could have just done that, right? But actually, if he just had that and just squished his arms, it wouldn't have been as effective, right? In terms of the actual thing that he did. So that's why he's added this very subtle, like...
Johnny, good to meet you, man.
You are a bodyguard for you there. I can knock you out in 3 seconds.
Hey,
What are you guys doing?
we're famous.
Have fun.
Oh, I'm having fun. I'm extremely famous.
Okay. What's
Yep.
your name?
It's Elton John.
Do you want a picture with me?
One bodyguard not doing the trick. Yep, so what do you know? 2
We
bodyguards.
have 2 security guards right now. We're gonna go all the way up to 50 today.
I'm interested to see how people react with just 2.
Re-highlighting the payoff is a very important part of a YouTube video. Very common. Mr. Beast, Airrack, ZHC, Matthew Beam, everyone you can name will at least at some points in the video remind people what the actual thing that they came for is. You know, we're going to eventually get to the 50 bodyguard situation, but for right now, let's see what happens if we deal with only 2 bodyguards. You might use phrases like, if this is a $200 house, imagine what would happen if we had the $50 house at the end. That sort of thing is very appealing to people because they make it feel like, hey, this person is not just wasting my time. I'm still gonna eventually get to the premise of the video, but you know, this person is reminding me that the premise is coming.
Listen guys, if you want people to stare at you, hire 2 bodyguards, because it freaking worked. This girl trying to align herself with the mafia.
So stupid, dude.
I have become too powerful, and I did some things I'm not proud of, I'm gonna be honest.
Excuse me, ma'am. Hey, we're gonna have to remove you from the swing. My client is a very important person, and he wants this swing.
Are you serious?
Yes, you're gonna have to be removed from this swing. I apologize. Thank you.
Best day of my life!
That's so bad.
Hey guys, we're just filming a video. I'm so sorry. This guy's actually really, really nice.
Don't be afraid. She's very weak.
Okay, have a good one, guys. I am sorry for this awkward experience.
Hey, I apologize. I'm gonna need you to leave the bar.
So funny.
I'm the biggest put in Hollywood after this.
Hey, I'm gonna take this bike for halvesies, okay?
Nah, man.
Okay, you didn't fall for
What's
it.
up, fellas? See, we're gonna need you to move. See, my clients here are very important.
So funny.
No, wait. Can I lay on your back?
Boys, I'm gonna need you guys to scoochie or touchie, okay? That went pretty okay.
People listen to us.
The look in their eyes was judgment. I want a deep sense of fear in their eyes.
You want to strike fear into their heart.
Yeah! Adidas, what's up, buddy?
That's so
You sleeping? So at the next stop, we're gonna have 5 security guards.
What's after 5?
10.
And then after 10?
50.
Oh my god!
So this next stop is called The Grove.
Okay.
It's a big mall in Los Angeles. Yeah, I think we try to use the security guards to tell other people what to do as well. Guys, I can tell you from experience, 2 bodyguards is great, but you know what's better than 2 bodyguards? 5 bodyguards. 5 is better than 2.
Stop looking, sir.
A lot, right? And it was working. I had all kinds of new fans. I think they thought I was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson because of how handsome and muscular I am. Just a theory. Anyway.
Hey,
I'm gonna need you to stop taking pictures of my client.
Public area, and this comes out, my wife is gonna find out I'm cheating on her, and it's not gonna be good.
And then this dude went and snitched on
Can I
us.
talk to like your detail leader or something?
I don't know what's
I
happening.
was like actual security.
The police are now getting involved.
I don't want to get deported, please.
Is somebody here like a celebrity or?
They are.
I don't know.
Can we pull out our phones and record him?
Sure.
See, now I feel threatened. Maybe we can do a little phone kiss, let me walk separate ways. All right, we good now? I think so. All right.
Everyone have a good day. Mother's Day, right?
My mom's just a clout chaser. She pretends to be my mom, but she really just wants my clout.
Alright, so they want us out of here ASAP. They do not want us in. You guys already know your boy's not gonna stop there. 10 bodyguards. Bro, this is so much money. Thank you, Current. Alright, so we are now.
That was a very funny sequence. I don't know what to say apart from these sequences are very organic. Like you can create the environment for the actual event, but you can't create the event itself, right? I think your job as someone that's editing a video is trying to figure out, you know, what's the basis behind the overall story? What are the interesting bits from this particular scene? If there are bits that aren't interesting, just don't include them. Even if you did them, if you did do them and it doesn't make sense not to include them, then try to make those very brief, but otherwise just really have a mind to not waste people's time when you're editing a video.
Runyon Canyon. This is like the classic place in LA. It's where tourists go to try to find celebrities on hikes. So we're here now with 10 bodyguards to see how this goes.
The videography is still like, the cuts are still pretty fast. The pacing is like less fast here. So in other words, it's not just one thing happening after another. You still got some breathing room, right? Like you understand what's going on. It's not going so fast that you can't keep track of the narrative anymore. And I think that that's one of those big successes of a video like this. Sometimes when YouTubers look at other YouTubers and try to replicate their style, particularly when it comes to entertainment and the aggressive fast-paced style of other YouTubers, they can fall into the trap of going so fast that the audience actually can't keep up. So you need to be wary to go at a nice clip, but not beyond that. For the most part, if you're not quite sure, probably erring on the side of a bit more fast is a bit better, but really the best way to find out is to actually get feedback from other people and specifically ask them, did you understand everything that was happening in the video? Do you feel like some bits of the video were a bit confusing? And that'll give you like a lot of information as to whether your pacing is correct or not. The other thing is that you want to vary your pacing. It's important not to just have fast, 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 fast for the entire video, right? It's better to actually have fast, 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 then have a little bit of breathing room, and then go fast again, and sort of go between those two paces. That makes the video more tolerable because it means that people don't have to feel like they're being force-fed the entire video at one go. It just gives people a little bit of space, but it also provides a nice contrast so that the actual powerful parts, the high-intensity parts, are almost highlighted by the contrast between those and the less intense parts, you know?
10 people is a whole nother ballgame.
We have 50 and this is just gonna be ridiculous.
All right.
Keep your eyes on it. What are you talking about?
So
How do you guys feel right now?
I feel like it's really important right now.
I'm gonna switch stuff out.
This is so funny. We have so many security guards. The wheel is dropped. What does that mean? They're taking it so seriously. They're being so aggressive.
This was really dangerous.
Watch out! All right.
Dude, that was the funniest thing I've ever done in my life. We're about to 10x our army. Let's go!
Alright, but we're increasing the intensity drastically, right? So as I talked about, that escalation of you have 2 bodyguards to kind of chill, 10 bodyguards, damn, like it's really starting to kick off, and now this war cry is really getting into the meat of it. So if you're at this point, you're not going to click off, I think, because like, wow, like I'm just literally arrived at the most interesting bit of the video. If someone distracts you and someone's like, hey, can you come have dinner? It's like, you kind of feel like, oh, I kind of really want to watch this before I go.
That is Hollywood Boulevard. Apparently we have another 40 bodyguards waiting on us. Listen guys, this is the original crew. I love the energy that we have here. We need to inspire the bigger group to have the same level of energy that we have right now. You know what I mean? Team on 3, baby! 1, 2, 3, team! Turns out guys, since we got Hayden to cut our price down in half, we got the world's weirdest group of bodyguards. I swear it was so strange. But it was 50 people. We even hired fake paparazzi.
There's the music choice is obviously something that aids the feeling of tension and everything like that. I'm not going to dive into that too much, but obviously you really want it to fit the energy of a particular point in the video. Ideally, you probably don't want to have music with vocals because that's just going to drown out the actual voiceovers and stuff like that. So here we just tend to use instrumentals. Something that's important from a videographic perspective, right, is the fact that the bodyguards are all dressed in black. That's not just for dramatic effect. It's actually for the reason that on the video itself, you can see who Airrack is at any one time because he's got this characteristic blue jacket, right? Thinking about how you can avoid individual characters within your scene getting lost is something you should think about too. If you're doing an entertainment thing, you can easily do the same thing as Airrack and just have people in different colors. For example, his whole team will usually have their own characteristic colors that indicate this person's this person. Let's say that you're doing another type of video. You're doing like a video about books, right? And then trying to highlight the actual sentence that you're talking about is the bit that's going to, you know, make it so that that bit pops. If you're going to do a video about gaming and something's happened in the game, then you might want to have something to highlight that thing is the thing that the viewer should be looking at, right? So it's almost like at any one time within a video, the viewer should always have maybe one or two specific things that they're looking at. But if you have too many different things going on and the viewer is looking at too many different things at once, that's actually not very good from a viewer's perspective, right? Because it's just confusing. Maybe you might see some really weird stuff, like you might actually see paradoxical spike in retention because people have to go back to look at that particular part of the video. But if you see a spike because there's two of the same thing in the same part of the video, is that necessarily a win? I don't actually think that that would be. It's just something that would be kind of annoying for the viewer and they'd be like, oh, like I got confused, like what was happening here? And you probably see almost this paradoxical like spike and then a bit of a drop off after that from the lack of retention. Now they've physically had to actually go a few seconds back in the video to keep watching the video. There's a lot of, this shot is important because you have to understand that scale is relative. MKBHD talked about this in his video. He said that when he attended, I think it was like a business degree or something, one of the first things that his lecturer said was that you have to always have a chart within context. So you have to have numbers within context. You have to have something to compare it to, right? Here you see the fact that you have 50 bodyguards compared to all these like tiny other little people, right? And even compared to the size of a bus and a car and that sort of thing. So that actually makes the wow effect of it so much more there in terms of theatricality and everything. So in an entertainment video, it's like, you know, this is one person, but this is 50 people. In a video where you're giving away money, you'd be like, you know, this is $10 and this is like $1,000 cash pile. If you're talking about like a book or something, then you might be like, look, this is what things were like before we had this particular technique. But then afterwards, all this sort of stuff happened. Like this was the reward and the almost the effect of the action. Having that relative scale is really useful for making people feel that they're either entertained and they have that wow factor, or in the case of, for example, in education YouTubing, it's rather this contrast between what someone can do and now what someone can do after they've learned the new piece of information. So you can adapt that relative scale concept to whatever you're doing.
Basically what we have here is an organized mob. They're stopping a literal car.
Here, filming the people's reactions is also part of the payoff because it's just interesting to see what other people are thinking. This is getting quite dramatic.
Oh my gosh, they're pushing everybody to the side.
The will is win. We gonna get it wrong, but we gonna stop track. Y'all with me? Let's go.
When you have an organized mob, there is no traffic. You guys want to grab a picture? Okay, let's do it. Hollywood Boulevard became a meetup for a celebrity that didn't even exist. It was me, but it was like fake celebrity guy. You know?
This is
anyway,
awesome.
I wanted to know, where all these people recognize me from?
You like his movies? Yeah. He was in that new movie. He's from the Spider-Man movie. Oh, no. Yeah. It was like Titanic.
I thought he was in that one movie, Transformers. That's who it is.
Spider-Man 2 and 3.
Remember now?
Real balance.
Alright, so we're now at
Final mission. Okay, so here is the finale, which is obviously the very start, which is this challenge that is set up at the start. Now that he's got these 50 bodyguards, he's got this newfound power. Can he actually complete the challenge that he set out at the start of the video? You might call this like, I don't know, there's probably a name for it. I'm just gonna call final boss, final boss completion.
Ranch. Saddle ranch, saddle ranch, saddle ranch. You guys are gonna wish that you hadn't turned down all those reservations all those times. It's a real shame that we have to do this. Hey, how's it going? Can I make a reservation?
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Hey, boys? Boys. Yeah, no, it's just my security.
Sir. Cannot.
Yeah, they're my bodyguards. They're just keeping me safe.
Not this many, sir. Sir, I'm afraid I can't see.
Oh, no. We not in. We just stand around the table.
I can see you 7, but that's it. And you're gonna have to sit in the back.
Yeah, boys, I think we'll take the table in the back. And even though I could only bring 7 guards and people were going crazy, I told them all I was either from Shrek 3 or the Titanic, and they somehow believed me. But sitting there with 7 security guards standing around me eating was that it is true what they say. It's lonely at the top. Being king of the hill ain't so great. Well, we got in the saddle ranch. But I gotta tell you something, it's lonely at the top. Shout out to Garrett Harper 24 for following on Instagram. I'm following back 1 person every single week. That's pretty much it. I'm leaving.
Nice. The ending was pretty quick, actually, compared to the amount that you could have done for the video, because it's kind of like you don't want your video to feel like it's dragged on at any point in time. So I'm sure that was a strong editorial decision to maybe, like, there's probably a lot of footage inside the actual restaurant itself, probably conversations with security guards or whatever. It may not be that interesting, especially if he can't bring anyone else in with him to actually have a chat and almost like a debrief, you know, to talk about the whole experience itself, which would have been funny. Here, he's got the classic Airrack ending, which is to have the subscribe button on his face, and then also to have the YouTube's recommended video, I think, on here. One other thing I should note is that the actual sponsorship for this video was extremely quick. In fact, you probably may not have noticed it if you're watching this video, which is that simply he was using the current card. It's an important part of YouTubing, particularly as a platform, to think about, like, with your ad sponsorships, how can you not sacrifice retention for ad sponsorships? There's very creative ways to do this. For example, Mr. Beast's videos that he did, I've definitely talked about this in some of the other case analyses that I did about Mr. Beast. But, you know, just trying to keep it quick is another way to do it, obviously, because most people wouldn't have even noticed that he used the card here. It might not be the best for a sponsor necessarily in this particular case, because, you know, how many people now know that, oh, I should go buy a current card to pay for things with? Probably not many, unless you've, like, watched the rest of his channel, right? So the basic structure of the video was that you have your hook, which is the explanation of, you know, what happens if you're rich, what happens if you had 50 bodyguards, and how interesting would that be? And then you've almost got this gradual, these challenges that are set up, like, you know, how are we gonna hire 50 bodyguards? And then you've got this gradual escalation in almost the act 2 or whatever, where you've got 1 bodyguard, 5 bodyguards, 10 bodyguards, 50 bodyguards. And because it's all sprinkled up with humor, it's just very interesting and funny to watch. By the end, you know, the end bit where there's so much escalation, where you've got 50 bodyguards and everything's happening, that's probably the most interesting bit of the video. The very end, where he was trying to get into the restaurant and actually did get into the restaurant, probably for Airrack's video is actually probably one of the weaker parts of the video, just because unfortunately the actual process of getting into the restaurant is not necessarily that interesting, because literally it's just, well, someone letting you in, right? It's almost like the real payoff of this video, which is the title of this video essentially, is 50 bodyguards. If you put them into the city with Airrack, like, what happens at that stage? So that's the actual best climax part of the video, and unfortunately the restaurant bit was like a little bit weak, but that's alright. The general idea is there, and that's how this video got 16 million views. So often people think maybe it's a huge channel, maybe there's like some other sort of promotions it did, maybe there's some secret tag or descriptions and stuff. It's not that. It's really just he's created a very good video with a very clear premise, very interesting content inside the video itself, with this escalation of the story to keep people moving along and keep people invested in the video. He's created some interesting characters in the video as well, and therefore this has been a high retention video that can be appealing to anyone. Like, you don't have to know anything about Airrack even to appreciate this video. I hope that you like this analysis. I'll be doing more on YouTube and Skillshare, so make sure to follow me on those platforms. Yeah, I'll catch you in the next video.